Yeah, excited about going into the postseason. Our guys did a nice job this past several days of finishing up our regular season on the road. It was obviously a unique stretch for us relative to most seasons, but that was outside of our control. So we just try to emphasize, finishing strong and being connected with each other, taking one game at a time. Going into the postseason, it's a really exciting opportunity. There's obviously two tournaments. You focus on one at a time. And, the Big 12 tournament is always just an extremely competitive event. Playing Texas Tech again, again, it's a great opportunity for us, especially coming off of our last game against them. So looking forward to this quick turnaround and getting up to Kansas City.
We'll start questions with Dennis. Go ahead, please, sir.
Coach, I don't know if you've been asked this before, but as much as the whole COVID situation messed with team chemistry, has it helped you guys? Are your legs fresher than they might have been? Because what you just pulled off this last week was pretty impressive. I mean, going into the Big 12 tournament, that is.
That's a good question. I was watching a game yesterday afternoon, and the commentator made a really good point. He said that the COVID pauses affect everyone differently, and they fall at different times in people's schedules. And, some people are able to keep practicing with some guys. Some people have to completely go on a pause. So obviously you'd rather not have it. But, I think that, for our guys, it's not really that they have fresher legs because we didn't play for that, stretch of time. I think it's more, when you're able to truly lose yourself and your teammates and each other, you can kind of find more. And they were tired yesterday. They did a really good job battling through that. Matt Coleman was just exhausted at halftime, and proud of him for, I told him, I said, man, we can really limit your time if you want. And obviously he wasn't going to do that. And he played great in the second half. He just kind of found more in him. And that's the case for a lot of our guys because, with the travel and stuff, it was pretty demanding. But I think, the mental and emotional side, there's always energy that you can find if you're in the right place.
Kirk Bowles.
Yeah, Shaka, I wonder if playing the road these last three games and how tough the Big 12 is, how much this has just prepared you for these next two tournaments. And I just wonder in the NCAAs, are you going to see anything that's a surprise to you guys after how tough the Big 12 is?
Well, I mean, the hope is that all the experiences that we've had over the past 12 months, really, we're coming up on the anniversary of the day we got pulled off the court, help prepare us. I told the guys right around early January, I said, we're going to go through more adversity and more challenges. And the difference between the great teams and everyone else is the great teams are able to use that adversity and those challenges to come closer together and to get stronger. So now is the time more than ever to do that. It's interesting because, let's be honest, as a college basketball player, kind of the end all be all is the NCAA tournament. But we have this, the Big 12 tournament, which is a phenomenal opportunity first. So, that's where we're trying to put our focus here this week. Again, it's a quick turnaround. We got back after midnight last night, and we leave tomorrow. So, hopefully the Big 12, I do think, Kirk, and this is no disrespect to any other leagues at all, because every league that I've coached in at the time has felt like it was really hard. So, but I do think our games, these Big 12 games, particularly amongst the top 7 teams, they're just like, have you ever read the Odyssey?
Mm-hmm.
They're just like so long. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you read the Odyssey or the Iliad and you're like, man, this is a good book, but when is it going to end? Like, it just keeps going. And that's how these games are. And that can work in your favor or it can work against you, depending on kind of the nature of the game.
Bob Ballou?
I just wanted to ask you a little bit about Jericho, because it feels like for the first 3 years of his career here, we talked so much about trying to get his confidence up and trying to get him to stay engaged and get him to stay on the floor and all those kind of things. And it really feels like something's flipped with him. I mean, he really kind of gets it now. How frustrating was it that it took him so long to get there? But then also, just how impressed are you with what he's been able to do this year?
Well, I'm really impressed. But, you know, I try not to dwell on frustration, Bob, you know, because in coaching, you can always find something to be frustrated about if you want. You know, remember, we're coaching young people. We're coaching guys that, as talented as they are, depending on circumstances, sometimes they're ill prepared for what they're going to deal with at this level. So for him, it's been interesting because every year has been so incredibly different. His freshman year, he came in here and he was in the recruiting class with Mo and Matt. And, you know, I think everything was just kind of exciting and a bonus that he did. He had a really good, strong end of the season. If you remember, Mo got hurt and he really stepped forward and played well for us. So his sophomore year, you know, really he was planning on being his last year here, Bob. Again, I've told you guys this before. For every player at this level, the ideal season ends with leaving this level. Ideal in their minds. So he started that year, and Jericho has always kind of taken some time in the season to get going. If you go back and look, you know, he's not necessarily someone that the first couple games just kind of hits the ground running, and it takes him some time. Well, while that was happening, Jackson Hayes was getting on a rocket ship and, you know, going the other way. So, you know, that was really challenging for Jericho to kind of go through that, and he had a hard time navigating that. Last year, I thought he took a big jump and was playing much, much better, really maturing. But then he got hurt. So that cut that short. And then, you know, this season, I think that, you know, he's really made progress. He's continued to mature. His growth as a person is so important anyway, but it's so correlated to his ability to communicate with his teammates, emote on the floor, and be engaged in everything that's going on. So I'm really proud of him. I'm proud that he's, you know, in range to graduate in May. And I think his future is incredibly bright.
Roger Wallace, go ahead.
Hey, Shaka, there's always been discussion about conference tournaments and, you know, does 3 or 4 days, you know, outweigh what you guys did for 4 months? But now with the potential for, you know, you could handle a pause during the season, but it could be catastrophic if something happened going to the NCAA tournament from basketball terms. How do you kind of wrestle with all that? Or are you so trained just to worry about the exact thing in front of you and not look down the road about, you know, this unusual circumstance of conference tournament, bubble, et cetera?
Well, you know, I think continuing to emphasize, Roger, you know, for our guys to be safe and stay out of the way, wear a mask, social distance, wash your hands. It's not, stuff sounds like a broken record, but, you know, it's what's important to keep each other safe. You know, from everything I've been told, when we do get to Kansas City, it'll be pretty buttoned up from the standpoint of, you know, contact with anyone that's not part of that, you know, tier 1 or whatever they call it. You know, so hopefully that will be relatively safe. And, you know, from there you go to Indy, and I think it's going to be even more stringent with, you know, just the restrictions and the testing. And and everything in terms of trying to keep guys safe. So we're going to keep emphasizing that. At the same time, Roger, I think it's interesting because the mental health and psychological part of it, I've talked to, a couple NBA guys that were in the bubble for all that time, over the summer. It's going to be really, really interesting to manage those two things, physical health, and then, trying to keep people sane. Just the other day when we were at Oklahoma, we played an 8:00 game. We had come in the day before, and it felt like we were in a hotel for a long time. And that was just, the better part of 2 days. So, we're hoping to be in a hotel a long time this month because that means we're doing well.
Kirk, go ahead.
Okay. I may have missed it, Shaka, but have you been vaccinated twice?
No, because I had COVID in
Yeah.
January. So Dr. Bray, our team doctor, has said that you're supposed to wait 3 months. I know there's different views on that, but no, I have not been vaccinated.
Okay. And do you have any opinion on the Eyes of Texas with the report coming out tomorrow? Just wondered if you've talked to your team about it at all.
Well, I've not seen the report. Obviously, it comes out tomorrow. There's been some discussion here, obviously, about that, and that's been ongoing since this summer. So I don't want to speculate on a report I haven't read yet. But my opinion is really more about the fact that when you're part of a family, there's going to be things you disagree on. But at the end of the day, if you have a foundation of care and love and respect for each other, you can get through anything. And my number one responsibility is the players on our team, their well-being, and not just their well-being physically, but their well-being mentally, emotionally, academically. So I think the student athletes here, not just our team, have done a really good job of, just conducting themselves and navigating this stuff, expressing their opinion, listening to other people's opinions. If they do disagree, doing it in a cordial way and in a respectful way. So I'm really proud of, again, not just our players, but all the student athletes here. And, remember, they've, in a large degree, initiated a lot of this conversation, not just about the Eyes of Texas, but about, a lot of the things that have been discussed over these past several months. And that's a good thing. It's good that they have a voice. They're willing to speak for themselves. They're willing to speak for their families, their communities. So, beyond that, I don't want to really speculate on something I haven't read yet. But I think more important than whatever's in that report is that moving forward, we all respect each other and help each other and understand that there's going to be some disagreeing. But if we are all part of the same family, then, there needs to be a foundation of love. And I think there can be.
Bob Ballou, please.
Shaka, just back on the Kansas City to Indianapolis front of, whatever happens, you're basically leaving Austin and you're not coming back, and it could be for 3 weeks, a month, however long it is. What's the most difficult part of that psychologically? You talked about what they went through in the NBA bubble. What is the most difficult part for a college kid? And do you try to get them, this may sound weird, get them away from each other sometimes where they have a breather? Because you spend a month with someone, you're going to probably get a little annoyed at points. Do they have breathers away from each other when you're in a situation like this? Have you thought through that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's something, Bob, I'm, really working on and have been working on going into this week and the rest of this month. Obviously, the primary focus up until the game ended last night was the regular season and finishing strong. But yeah, it's a unique dynamic because as a team, you want connection. You want guys to be together. But like you said, guys sometimes need a break. You asked what the most important thing is. To me, the most important thing is, making sure that at the front of your mind is what you want to accomplish and why you're doing it. And, whether you're in a hotel for several weeks or whether you're in a different state than you're used to being in, playing in a different arena, it's about, okay, this is why I'm here and this is what I want to get done. And obviously that's an individual choice, but it's also, connected to those around you on your team. And it does get more challenging for sure when you're in a different type of setting. Normally in the NCAA tournament, if you're fortunate to win your first 2 games, then you come back and you get a few days at home and you practice and then you leave again. That's not how it works this year. But at the end of the day, it's still about winning and advancing and trying to finish your season the best you can. So I think for me, I'm just going to try to keep at the front of our guys' minds the exact way that, we feel like is best to go about it, and then try to be really, really cognizant of how they're doing and how they're feeling. And sometimes that may be different from player to player. Some of our players, can really, really benefit from some work on mindfulness and, just really being able to get in touch with what's going on in their bodies and their minds. Other guys may need some other diversions. The other day when we were at Oklahoma, it was a nice day outside. And a couple of those guys, I said, get outside, just walk around a little bit. So, you just got to figure out in the moment what makes the most sense.
Roger Wallace.
Hey, Shaka, how used to something have you gotten that you probably never dreamt you would go through, from empty arenas to 1,000 people to staring at us on computer screens for the last 4 months? Is it almost bizarre that you're kind of acclimating to such an unusual circumstance?
Well, I think that's what we do as human beings. We adjust and we figure out how to make sense of different situations. You mentioned the arenas. I will say this: huge difference, between no fans and limited fans. I mean, huge. And one of the things, and this is not an excuse, it kind of, when we had no fans, it was for good reason, either COVID or, following that winter storm. But those games were hard for our guys. It was hard for no parents to be there. That was, just a tough deal. And then just the quiet nature of it. You try to bring great energy from the bench, but it's a different type of noise. I think a couple technical fouls we got in those games were because there was no fans. As much as, having 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 people in an arena is not the same as a packed house, it's way better than no fans. And in terms of acclimating, you kind of look at it both ways, Raj. On one hand, you kind of have to. I mean, otherwise you can sit there and feel sorry for yourself that, things aren't the way they were in some circumstances. On the other hand, you do, you want to look forward to, going back to the time where you can be around people a little bit more and, not be as concerned about this stuff.
Can I follow?
Oh, go ahead, Roger.
I'm sorry. Do you notice that sometimes the style of play sometimes adjusts to that? Maybe it becomes a little bit more like an empty arena, for lack of a better term, where, if there's 15,000, maybe things wouldn't happen that happened in the game. And it's almost changed some of the, at times in games, the style a little bit.
That's a good question. I think that would probably be a better question for the guys, Matt Coleman and Courtney Ramey. I don't know that it's changed the style. I mean, I think what it does change is the great thing about having fans at a sporting event is the energy of the fans obviously impacts the game. And it can impact the game in a lot of different ways. You know, you can, as a player, you can feel the excitement of the fans, the enthusiasm, you can feel the anxiety sometimes. So I think when you remove those things from the game, it is different. I don't know if the style of play is faster or slower, but the guys are just out there playing basketball, you know, and some of that stuff's been removed.
Okay, I'm down to my last two. Speaking of changes, I'm going to ask one for Dustin that he submitted, and then Kirk, I'll come to you for the last one. Dustin's question, Coach, it's impossible to know what your team may have become after your 10-1 start because of COVID, but where have you seen the most growth following all the pieces being put back together and putting that in the rearview mirror?
Well, you know, I just think, you know, whether it's before we went through the COVID pause or after, we've been at our best when our guys put each other and winning above, you know, personal and individual concerns, and when they're connected around one common cause. So, you know, where we've seen growth is when guys have grown in that way. Again, it's not always a linear path, but, you know, I think compared to, you know, a lot of other teams here that we've had, it's, you know, I think we've shown a lot of growth in that area. I'll give you an example. We've struggled here. Surprised you guys didn't bring this up. We have struggled here after beating OU the next game. Because it's like, man, we beat OU. It's a big win. And I really challenged the guys with that going into the TCU game. And I thought they took a very, very mature approach, and they took on the challenge of, you know, what I said to them was, do you guys want to be different or not? Because last year we went up to OU and won, and then we followed it up with that Oklahoma State game. And they did a really good job of just taking the right approach.
Kirk, one last one for you, please.
Yeah, I missed your Zoom last night, so I don't know if you, on Greg Brown's Showtime play, did you scold him, or were you okay with that? And how many times did you pull that off as a player?
Well, I mean, some of the dunks that he is able to do, I don't know if you could take all of us on this Zoom together, combine all of our vertical jumps, and we would be able to do those dunks. Here's what I told him. And I was going to take him out as soon as he missed that dunk. I don't know if any of you were watching the game. I had Kai ready to sub in for him, and then Courtney said, no, leave him in. And he was pretty adamant about it. So I left him in. I try to listen, you know, to our leaders, especially when they're as engaged as Courtney was last night. But the simple message is, when you have a breakaway, it's your responsibility to get 2 points for your team. That's it. And I think he gets that. You know, in the moment he was a little frustrated about it, but I think he gets that. And hopefully any player at this level playing basketball can take ownership of that. You know, when it's amazing what happens when guys are willing to allow your high expectations as a coach to become their high expectations for themselves and their team. And the danger in that for guys, I think for especially younger guys is, well, you know, that means it's kind of on me, you know, to do that. Yeah. That's how the great players become great. That's how the great teams become great teams. So I thought he had a very good game in a lot of ways. He had a season high in assists. You know, I thought he had some really good activity. And, you know, he's still a freshman, so there's going to be some mistakes.